Good morning again, everyone, and welcome back to the KSR YouTube channel. Thanks for being here. For one, some of you guys have been following along for a long time, and we appreciate everybody that watches the channel. Please subscribe if you like race car stuff, race car building, tech tips, shenanigans from time to time. So not as much shenanigans as other channels, but maybe that'll change in the future. I've got something in the works for Cletus and Cars Houston that I think you guys will all get a kick out of. So we're back at the shop today. We've got all kinds of different color cars here behind us. We got the yellow Viper. It's almost ready to get onto the dyno. We'll do that after LS Fest because we still got to get some stuff ready for LS Fest. We've got a 95 Firehawk here, jammed in here all crooked because the Viper still has got an oil leak that we didn't want dripping on the Firehawk that we just finished up to get it back to its owner. Didn't want to have to clean the oil off of it. And today, I'm gonna be doing some work on SoccerMom. If you guys saw the last video, SoccerMom was on the dyno and we pulled it off to load the Chevy 2 on. Well, actually we pushed it off because right now it doesn't run. And I'm gonna show you why and show you what we've changed, as well as go back and maybe add in a couple of dyno pulls where we discovered that we have an issue. So, here we go. All right, well, we're on the dyno. We're just gonna try to make 2 runs here. I got some extra camera angles on the car, which I planned to do at the racetrack, but now we're on the dyno. So yeah, you're gonna get dyno undercar videos as soon as we're done with this pull. But I'm gonna put the camera up, mounted to the roof. This is gonna be 30 pounds of dome pressure, which should be around 30 pounds of boost. Should be a pretty good number. Hopefully the dyno doesn't freak out. I'm gonna get this thing fired up. I got the tune loaded in it, 30 pounds of dome pressure. Here we go. So you can see on the dyno, it went up and then just laid over. And it's no rev limiters. We don't have any rev limiter set up anywhere near that. And now we're under the valve covers, looking to see if we can see anything there. See if we've got a broken valve spring or anything. Which we'll do some investigating about that off camera. And hopefully, we'll be back in a minute. This is going to affect our ability to make LS Fest if we've got some kind of problem that we can't figure out. Stay tuned, see what we do. All right, so through some further diagnosis, we may have discovered our problem. If you guys didn't know, Kimber is an awesome Chevrolet tech at our local dealership. And he said there's oil coming out of our sensor. You can see that's, maybe you can't see that it's shiny. But there's not supposed to be oil where the sensor plugs in. So maybe that's part of our problem. Or maybe that is our problem. Either way, we're gonna find out in just a minute when we put a new sensor in it. We're gonna go ahead and change the cam sensor too. And then I'm gonna do a system log where I log the cam and crank signals. Get out in the light. Oh yeah, there's an awful lot of oil down in there which you can't really see. Oh yeah, there you can. So if you didn't know that, that's not supposed to be there. And this sensor has been in the car a long time. Long time. Time for a new one. In case you were wondering, 30 pounds of boost. SoccerMom makes a little over 1,185 horsepower. Down here where it actually hit the converter, it made 1209. And that's at 30. You can see the boost up there, 31 and a half, 31 and a half, 30.606 down there. If it works this pull, we might just turn it up to 35 or 40. See what it does there. Yeah. All right, we're gonna try this again. New crank sensor, 30 pounds of dome, 8800 rev limiter. Although we're not gonna quite go that far. All right, fire in the hole. Just loses power. What? Didn't miss, but it lays over hard. Now I can feel it in the car, like lay over. Just went south at like 145 miles an hour. All right, time to look at some more stuff. Be right back. All right, so here's our last pull. And you can see what we've got going on that's not very happy. So peaks up here, 1235-ish, and then it just starts getting unhappy. And you can see it's still got boost. And typically, when you've got a boosted engine, you can see down here, I mean, we went to 162 miles an hour. This is about 8,300 on the blue pull. It should be similar wheel speed up top here on this. And typically the pulls, when you add more boost, they just go parallel. As long as the boost stays parallel, which you can see we added 12 pounds, 19.4 to 31.54. And this spot right there, it's picking up a little over 300 horsepower. And it should carry that 300 horsepower all the way out to here. It should, but it's not. So we've got some work to do. Well, as you saw from the dyno chart there, we've got a problem that we need to fix. We need this car to turn 83, 84, 85, 100 RPM or higher. We know the turbo will move enough airflow to keep making power up there. For the car to fall off so hard at 7,900, we've got some kind of issue. So what we think our problem is we're hoping our problem is we think our valve springs are starting to get a little weak. So I've actually changed a couple of them already and took some off and tested them. And valve spring, like anything else, is a wear item on a race car, especially beating this thing up, especially when you're trying to turn big RPM. We still have a hydraulic roller camshaft in SoccerMom, and things have to be perfectly right when you've got a hydraulic roller cam and you're trying to turn this kind of RPM. So through some testing, we measured the spring pressures at it's called the installed height. So the actual height where the spring is compressed when it's captured between the cylinder head and the valve retainer, or the spring retainer that's on top of the spring. They were off about 25, 30 pounds from where they should have been on the seat. And then that multiplies a little bit as the lift goes up. And basically we're trying to maintain control of the valve so that the lifter stays on the lobe of the camshaft. So what we think was happening, especially at higher RPMs, the spring kind of lost control of the valve and the valve spring, and we were getting some bounce and some flutter when the spring would come back to the seat. And as you can gather, that is not good for valve spring longevity, valve longevity. It's just rough on stuff. You want everything to be nice and controlled, nice and smooth. And we think we didn't have that. If this doesn't fix it, the only thing left is the intercooler. We know the intercooler could be a restriction, but that intercooler is rated to, the core is rated to 1760 horsepower or something like that. Maybe it's a problem. If this still doesn't fix it, we're snatching the intercooler off and we're gonna put this sucker on alcohol. All the other super fast hydraulic roller guys, that's what they're doing. And we're going to LS Fest. We wanna be in the conversation when it comes to, you know, being one of the fast cars there. SoccerMom has been doing well, except for that trip to Cletus and Cars Indy where we got smashed by Ruby. But that wouldn't happen again if we lined up, I'm just saying. Maybe we'll get a rematch, Cletus and Cars Houston. I'll see if I can get this thing drug over there. But anyway, I'm gonna walk you through measuring, changing some valve springs. For those of you that don't know, there's a rating on the valve springs at different installation heights. So maybe you can see on the box here, hopefully it's clear. These are BTR SK703 springs, or at least their spring kit. The part number for the spring is actually different, but this is their spring kit that we use. And it is supposed to set up at 195 pounds with an installation height of 1.71 inches. Now that will clear up to, I believe, a 650 lift cam without getting too close to fully compressing the spring into what's called coil bind. And talking with Brian Tooley earlier this week, as well as John Bewley and some other super experts when it comes to LS stuff, we feel like not only are our springs low, because we've taken a couple of them off and checked, and instead of being 195 pounds, they are 180 pounds. And then that number gets a little worse. The spring is losing some of its rate from just all the times it's been cycled, I guess. I'm no metallurgist, but I think that's the reasoning behind that. So the idea is that we have some room to shim the springs even tighter below the 1.710 and maybe get even a little bit more spring pressure throughout the whole range to keep better control of everything. And with a hydraulic roller, you're boxed into a window of acceptable spring rates. Too high and you just beat the internals of the lifter up. Too low and you get lots of valve bounce, and you know, it's called floating the valves effectively. The camshaft has lost control of the valve, and the valve is slamming and bouncing against the seat instead of just closing nice and smoothly. As you may can imagine, smooth is a lot easier on parts, because when things are bouncing and things get torn up. So what we're gonna do here is I've done some calculations already. Our cam is 615 lift. So what I can do is actually use an extra about 30 thousandths of an inch, since these are set up for a 650 lift spring. So not only can we set up at 1.710, we can even add a 30 thousandth shim to tighten that up to 1.680 inches, and that'll give us even more spring rate which should give us, actually it's not spring rate, so that'll give us even more spring pressure because we're compressing the spring a little bit more. Hopefully that will give us some more RPM, even above and beyond what we were doing before. I've got something else trick to show you once we get all of these springs swapped out. But this is the tool we use to check the spring heights, and saw it was compressed a second ago there. So it's got a little indicator there on it, and you can turn this and adjust it. See, it's got a cut for the valve spring retainer. So we're going to assemble that into where the spring would go to actually check the installed height, and then I measure the springs to verify what we kind of already know, that they're weaker than they should be. And then we're going to install the new springs on with a little bit of extra shim in them, and hopefully make more RPM and make more power. Time for me to get to work. Alrighty, well, we got all the springs swapped on the whole engine, which you guys saw half of it in the time lapse. So for the most part, you can see where I went through and recorded all of the old settings. A few on this side were actually pretty good. 8 intake was a little weird, so that could have been the source of the problems right there. You can see our final pressures pretty much 220 across the board. So a pretty good improvement in the, the overall seat pressure. I don't know what the percentage there is. I guess it's probably, well, 30 pounds, so like 10%. So that's something. So another big thing we've done is we've upgraded to BTR's new shaft rocker system, and you can see it's got actually stock rockers inside of it. We have some of the BTR has a new rocker available, but we haven't got those yet. So I'm gonna go ahead and put this together with this, and you can, stock form, there's only one bolt per rocker arm. They may be able to flex or dance around or something. Well, now with it having the shaft that captures, you've got 2 rockers on a shaft, you now have 5 bolts sharing the load. No way to twist, no way for side to side twist, flexing, nothing like that. So pretty excited about that. And once I get those all installed, I'll be cranking this thing back up. So with the short travel hydraulic roller lifters that we run, it's very critical to have the proper amount of preload on them. So we have remeasured our push rod length. I actually did that last week before we took it apart. and nothing changes. The valve is still in the same location in the engine even though we changed the spring. So we've measured our push rod length that we need to run the shaft rocker system, because the factory cast rocker stands, you know, there could be some, it's a casting, it could have some abnormalities in it, not everything be perfectly equal. Now pretty much the engine all, like, we had 3 different length push rods in the old setup. Now we have the same push rod length for the new setup. So that could have been part of our problem too. Hopefully eliminating a lot of little things that are gonna add up to bigger RPM. Yeah, it's time to go fast. We gotta go fast at LS Fest. We'll get back to work, see what all we can knock out, and then I'll just skip ahead to the cranking it back up again. So hang on just a second. All right, well, we've got both sides all back together. Figured I'd show you what this BTR shaft kit looks like on there. Couldn't figure it out from before. Got a bunch of bolts holding the rockers on now. So a couple of tips. So I guess it's really one tip, but when you're doing valve springs, rocker arms, you're not going to hurt anything by putting oil on it. It's good to pre-lube valve springs, because you think about, especially if you've got doubles or triples, they're going to be rubbing on each other, and you don't want to put any kind of heat into them before the oil gets pumped up into the valve cover. You know, when the engine's running, typically there's a pretty good level of oil inside the valve cover that keeps the valve springs cool. So oil them suckers up when you put them in there. Before you crank the motor back up, get a good coating of oil on that. I even fill up the rocker arms so it can kind of bleed into the bearings and all that stuff. Lube put some oil on the tips of the valves, tips of the rocker arms, both ends before you stick the push rods in. But yeah, we're just about getting ready to crank this thing back up. And then I'm gonna switch both cars around. And then this will be back on the dyno. When am I gonna put it on the dyno? I might put it on the dyno right now. We'll see. Probably should wait for Will and Kimmer to be here too. Anyways, I'm gonna get this thing put back together the rest of the way and crank it up. Well, it's the moment of truth. She's all back together. It's getting a little late in the day, but man, it's a pretty day today here in Florida. Started out really foggy, but it's pretty out right now. It's not super hot. I'm hoping LS Fest is gonna be a little cool too. Somebody's got some shenanigans going on out there. But I haven't cranked it up yet. Haven't put the charger on it. So our new battery's doing well. Let's see if she cranks. Yay, it runs. All right, well, I'm actually gonna end it off there. It's getting kind of late. Don't want to really be here by myself making big power on the dyno in case something goes whoops. And plus I want Will and Kimber here since they're a part of the car. It is Sunday and I'm tired and it's getting late and there's somebody flying an airplane. I'm gonna get my pilot's license one of these days. I've always loved flying. Anyways, I'm rambling. Thank you again for subscribing, watching. Please click like, comment, all that fun stuff. We'll see you guys next time.